Welcome to How to Be a Person, a podcast about life with me, your host, Giuliano Grimaudo. Hello. Welcome, Eric G. Thanks so much for joining me today. How you doing, man?
Thank you for having me, Giuliano.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. For you and for anyone who's maybe this is the first episode they're listening to, I started this podcast because I wanted to recreate the experience I had as an Uber driver, where I would just meet someone for the first time, not know anything about them, and I would have these awesome conversations. So I specifically, when I have guests on, I really don't know too much. And so for me and for anybody listening, Eric, you want to tell me a little bit about yourself, and we'll kind of just explore the conversation from there.
Yeah, and also at the end of it, do we get a chance to review our Uber driver and kind of say, the conversation, the music? I don't know. No,
Love it.
No, I'm a life coach, writing coach, based in Los Angeles. Recently, not recently, I guess last year, I had a book published about personality typing. Which is what I use for my life coaching. And basically, I just established or developed this methodology of personality types throughout the decade that I owned an education company for. So now I just coach individually and use that in my practice.
I love that. So you owned an education company? What do you mean?
So I owned a company for about a decade, actually, where we served about 1,000 students a year. And basically, It was through the No Child Left Behind, not to get into all politics and stuff, but basically we would go into students' homes, my tutors would, and work with students, underprivileged students one-on-one. And so, I use personality typing because, a lot of teachers have that same personality type, which is great. But of course, not all students have that personality type, right? Because we're all different, and students are taken from the Gen Pop, right? So I would try to teach my teachers that so that they can figure out what personality type they are, what personality type their student is, and then work through that conflict and kind of make sure that they know, their values might not necessarily be their students' values. So you might need to motivate them differently.
That's interesting. So just so I understand, are you saying that you created these personality types? It's like a system that you made.
Yes. It was a system that I created over time. Obviously I studied some of the previous ones like MBTI and, Enneagram and all those kinds of things, DISC. And I did that, all throughout my teens, really. And as I did, I started realizing, there are, I don't say problems, but there are things that can be modified. And so I modified it to where I do have 16 types, which is a familiar number for anyone who knows MBTI. But the way you go about diagnosing what personality type someone is in my methodology is very different.
Interesting. Okay, that's kind of cool because first of all, I mean, there's really just a handful of those things that people know about. So it's kind of cool that you came up with your own. I think that's pretty sweet. I definitely want to dig into that. But the first thing that popped in my head was when you said that you kind of started getting to this when you were a teen.
Yeah, in high school, everyone's always insecure in high school, but I was a special kind of insecure. Not that I was special, but I think I was one of those kids who was always around people, and at the surface value, people probably say, "Oh, he's super cool and happy and whatever." But then inside, I was like, "Well, I feel a little different." So I think there's a line that Robin Williams might have said, or maybe misquoted as him saying, where he's like, "The worst feeling is being around a lot of people and feeling alone." And sometimes in high school, I kind of felt that way based on different values that I had versus my classmates. And you can't change those, right? It's not like you can go okay, I'm just gonna be some different person. I mean, you could. So I did a lot of studying about personality types on my own time, obviously.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then that was great because it helped me develop my own about 2 decades later.
Yeah. No, it's kind of cool how some of us, we go through different things and it's easy in the moment to be like, this sucks. But on a longer time horizon, most of us can get to the point where we eventually appreciate the negative thing, right? If you want to, if you want to even call it that we went through, and because we can see how it affected us later. So I think that's kind of cool. Can you explain a little bit more about the discrepancy you said you felt between your values and the people around you, and why that made you feel alone?
Yeah. I mean, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, I think when we grow up, and I think this is a common thing that everyone experiences now, when I was a kid, when my parents were kids, whereas there's that pressure to go okay, this is what you should value. You should get good grades, and then you can go to a good college, and then there you can get a good job. And then from there you can get married, have kids, and have a house and all those kinds of things. And I think that's pushed on a lot of us. I'm not saying that's bad, but through my studying and through just practical experience of meeting a lot of different students throughout the years, and people just generally throughout the years, that's not everyone's core value. But when you're told that that's what it should be, then that becomes a problem, like for you, because then you're either like, screw that, I'm going to do my own thing, or you're going to be that person who's like, oh, maybe I'm so wrong. Why am I so weird? And then you're going to try to assimilate. And I think both those things are incredibly unhealthy.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so funny you say that. I was just within the last couple of days. So I do coaching. I do life coaching as well. I haven't written a book on personality types, but I was formulating an offer, and that's part of the approach that I was taking as well, where it doesn't matter what your background is. Like for me, I experienced that through religion. Okay, the way that I was raised, it was like, hey, this is what you're supposed to want. This is what is supposed to be your view of right and wrong. This is what you're supposed to, like, what your goals should look like. This is what your family life should look, like all of these things. And it didn't match up with me, but it took me a really long time to be able to get to that point, right? But it's exactly what you said. Either you're like, screw this, right? And you like just completely leave, or you feel bad about yourself the entire time, whatever it might be. But that was what I was putting together with this offer, is like, oh, okay, like this is what I've been through, and that's what I can help other people go through, because it doesn't matter whether you were raised in a super religious household, or maybe it was, like you said, through like the people that you were surrounded with at school, of like, so it could be coming from religion, it could be coming from society in general, it could be coming from your job, it could be coming from school, whatever it might be. But I think we all experience that, like to a certain degree, where there's this set of values, like you said, essentially like what I should want, who I should be, what should matter to me, that's kind of forced on us. And I think everyone has to get to the point where they realize, okay, those are my values or they aren't, and then make a decision about it.
Yeah, because in the book I mentioned is about half the population. So I split people up into 4 personality packs, I call them. And then within those packs, there are 4 animal types. Just because animals are really easy to remember and everyone always remembers.
Sure.
Especially if you're
smart.
a fox.
That's really
right?
smart.
You're a fox. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm a fox. The less cool animals, people are like, oh, why do I have to be a beaver? This kind of sucks. I'm like, hey, man, mine's not that cool either. So,
I'm a gerbil.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to be a mouse. No, we don't have mice or gerbils on our thing. But,
mouse rat.
A manatee. What am I? I was going to have a manatee, and I was like, no one's going to want to be that one. But yeah, but half the population fit into one of the packs, and each pack is divided by their core value, and that value is safety and security. So when half the population approximately value safety and security, and that's why you think of like getting a house, getting married, like there's that certain sense of like structure within your life. And of course, when you think of like teachers, most elementary school teachers are that type, so they tell their students, okay, like follow the rules. Well, first off, the first thing you learn is these are the rules. The first day of school, this is my name, and this is your desk, and because it just gives that like safe space, which is great. We all need that safe space, but as we grow older, we start realizing, oh, I don't really value safety and security. What if I value like visceral excitement? Those are 2 very different things. And I always say the person who values visceral excitement is going to want to go on that roller coaster because they're going to feel like thrown around. And the person valuing safety and security is going to be like, wait, why do you want to feel like you're going to die? Like, that's exactly the opposite of how I want to feel. Right. And it's, like 2 different people, and both are great. We need everyone in our life. It's just terrible when, like you said, we grow up and we have to make that decision. And sometimes either way, any extreme in how we make the decision can come off kind of poorly.
Yeah. I love what you mentioned about school, because, and I've talked about this many times on the podcast, but like, it's definitely like school is definitely built to breed a certain type of person. That's not a bad thing though, right? It's like what you said before. That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like if that path, like that you described before, go to school, go to college, get a good job, get married, have kids, buy a house, pay it off, retire, it's 65. Like if that is a valuable path to you, is that it aligns with your values, then school is great. You know what I mean? Like school is awesome for you. Cool. So that's what I'm saying. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but also, like you said, that's not everybody. But that is the path that everyone's forced into. Everyone is put into this path. And I mean, granted, there's some people who choose to homeschool their kids. That's fine too. But generally that is the path that everyone is kind of squeezed into. And like you said, like from day one, like you are being bred to go down that path. It's like, it's so funny you say that too, because I kind of like, I've thought about it before, like how school like kind of does that. And what you said about the desks, I totally forgot about that, right? It's like just from day one, it's like, this is where you sit.
Yep.
This is where we tell you to sit. It's not even just like, it's like just where you get to exist in this building is in this spot.
Oh, yeah. And this is the pass. This is the pass you need to go to the restroom. You know,
yes,
this is the
you
rule.
Ask for permission to complete a bodily function. What? This is so weird. You know what I mean? Like, it's so strict. And I think sometimes we don't think about it. And I get it, right? Like, if you have a bunch of kids in a single room, you need rules or else it's going to be complete chaos. I understand that aspect of it. But maybe that whole system is screwed up in the first place, right? But it's interesting how there's all these little things in place that are like setting you up for that very specific future, when in reality, like you said, that's not everybody. So I'm curious what you said, though, about like, did you say it was like half the population, the value is safety and security?
Yeah, approximately about a half that we found. You know, like, once again, we'd have about 1,000 students a year with our company. And so I'd have my tutors at least try to type all the students. And that's the most common one. And that was like a Gen Pop kind of thing. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, and that's, I mean, that makes sense. And also like 1,000 that's a really good, like, it's like a sizable number to be able to look at, like sample size meaning. So half are like value the safety and security. Then what are the other three, right? Because you said there's 4.
Yes. So the half that I say value safety and security, I call them gatherers, based on like the fact that, you know, in our medieval village or like agricultural times or agrarian times, we'd have different roles in the village. And just to explain why we have so many, we need the most gatherers, right? Like, you need that many people to like guard the village and bring in the harvest. So about a third of the population, I call them hunters. And of course, we also need a lot of hunters, right? Hunter-gatherers. It's just that hunters die because hunting is kind of risky, right? So there's just a third of them, you know, left versus the half.
Don't tell the hunters.
Yeah. Well, you know, they the funny thing is they don't mind. And to a certain extent, I mean, if there wasn't some kind of risk in anything, they would not be as excited. Right? Yeah. Like, I think in the book, I use that as a reference point to how you know you're a hunter versus a gatherer. Is that there's this movie called First Night. This is a really random, obscure reference. But Richard Gere, he plays Sir Lancelot. And this guy's like, you know, saying, hey, like, how are you such a great fighter? I'd love to, can I learn? And then Richard Gere's like, or Lancelot's like, yeah, like, you know, I can teach you. And then he's like saying, oh, it's really easy. All you have to do is these things, move your feet this way. And the guy's like, okay, I got this. And then the last most important step is you just have to not care whether you live or die. And, you know, the guy's like, wait, what? Like, that's a totally different mindset. I can't think that way. I'm thinking to fight so I can protect myself. And of course, Lancelot, the whole idea is that's what makes him such a great fighter, is that he just doesn't care whether he lives or dies. He just goes with the motion and goes with the flow, right? And doesn't even think about those things. And those are the hunters, and they make about a third of the population. So that dichotomy of gatherer versus hunter is probably like a very, very common one. Like, if you think of like The Odd Couple or Bert and Ernie, or can't think of any others, but, you know, like where there's the structured, responsible, organized person versus the spontaneous, fun-loving, excitable person, and they bounce off each other. And it's common because they make up about 85% of the population combined, right? Yeah. So those are the two major packs.
Okay, interesting. What are the other two? Of course I want to know.
Yeah, good. I set it up that way. So the other two only make about 15% of the population total. So 8 and 8%, let's just say. I know 8 and 8 makes 16, but we'll just approximate. One are called the shamans. And just like any village, we have a shaman. And the shaman is the one who tells you, oh, guys, I think it's going to rain, you know, or it's coming about that time. So they're kind of like the spiritual leader of the village. And shamans seek self-knowledge. So where the other ones sought safety and security, and the other packs, hunters, sought excitement, like visceral excitement, shamans want to know more about themselves. So everything they do is predicated on finding out about themselves. And then the last one are the smiths, like blacksmiths, and they seek information. So everything they do is motivated by their search for, I hate saying knowledge, because if you say knowledge, then everybody thinks they're a smith until they meet a smith, and they're just like, God, that person was such an asshole. You know, so, you know, that's a very common thing, because, you know, once again, Smiths are objective. They just care about information. They're not trying to make friends. They're not trying to feel safe and secure. They're not trying to have fun. They're just like, look, I just want to get information. And if I got to be mean to get it, so what? You know, I didn't even realize I was being mean. Yeah, I mean, that's an extreme sense. Oftentimes, they don't even really know their knowledge of social etiquette is not great already. So that's their weak point for the Smiths. But once again, they seek information. And the shamans seek self-knowledge. And yeah, those are the 4 packs.
Do you have any like like clear examples of the Smiths? Like I'm trying to picture
Oh yeah.
someone like this.
Yeah, like I love using pop culture. In the book, I use pop culture a lot because clearly,
Okay.
those are references. Like, like Iron Man, Tony Stark is a Smith, Bruce
Mm,
Banner is a Smith. Generally, when you see like people, I'm not saying all Smiths are tech geniuses. That's generally how they're just
mm,
portrayed when we think of like a story because it makes them automatically interested. Um,
yeah,
but like Sherlock Holmes, easy Smith,
I see. I
Hermione
see.
Granger. I mean, Hermione Granger is great. I think one of the things that she always does when they're in trouble, she goes to the library, right? Because that's the way yeah, that's how she navigates the world, right? Is through information. Like, how are we going to solve this
Yeah.
problem? More information. Versus Harry, who's just kind of like, I don't know, I'm just going to throw myself in there and I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to find out about myself though, and then Ron is kind of like cowardly because Ron's like, oh, I don't know about this, guys. Oh, I'm not feeling great
Safety
about
and
this.
security.
Yep, safety and security. He's got the big family. I'm not saying that if you have a big family, you're automatically a gatherer, but it fits him, right? Like he's got this huge family. But if you notice his twin brothers, the Weasley twins, clearly not safety and security. They're the hunters, right? They're clearly into like the fun, excitement. They quit
Yeah.
school to start their own business. A very hunter thing to do, by the way. Hunters love, they don't particularly love education or like, I guess I should say classical education. They're the type of person who's like, you learn by doing. Just go into life and then you'll learn. So.
Interesting. So I have a question for you because
Mhm.
I have like been interested in stuff like that for a long time, but I also tend to resist some of these things, like the ideas of like
Mhm.
putting people into the categories, because I am always open to like learning more and changing. And I feel like if you had asked me like 10, 15 years ago some questions, like I probably would have been put in a certain personality type, whereas now maybe I feel like I'd probably end up in a different one. And I could be wrong with that, but that's always been like my guess, that it would change over time. And so I'm curious, like your thought process on it. Is this just like inherent, or is this something where like over time maybe someone's personality type might change?
No, that's a great question. And I always answer it kind of the same way because, well, I believe it. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't believe people can change. I believe we grow. And I always say that
Mm.
because, obviously the big difference, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's great to
Agreed.
know our personality type because then we can help us grow into a better version of ourselves because that's not necessarily guaranteed. I mean, we can grow into a worse version of ourselves as we get older.
Sure.
So I think if we are actually changing, if someone changes before our eyes, I think in a way that's a good thing because, well, it can be bad and good. Bad is if they are changing for us, right? If we're like telling
Mm.
them, oh, you need to be more like this, and they're like, okay, and then,
Yeah.
but I think it is good because the good part is maybe they're just changing because, and like you said, like I would have answered it differently younger when I was younger. It's maybe because we're learning more about ourselves, and that's why we
Mm.
feel like we're changing, or we're learning more about other people. And I think to me, like I
Mm.
totally agree. Like I'm not a big like put people into boxes. I mean, I do think sometimes when people complain about
Like
that,
I know that's my whole book,
yeah,
the
I
whole
know
premise of my book.
that's the premise of the book. But I always like to say it's not a
Uh,
science, it's a craft, And my thing
yeah.
is like I don't like to put people in the boxes as much as I want to encourage people to learn more and more about the people in their lives. And as you learn more
Mm.
and more, maybe the way you see them changes for good
Yeah.
in a good way, right? I do think sometimes the
Yeah.
people who do like, well, I don't want to be put in a box, they are constantly putting people into boxes anyway. It's just boxes that they understand, right? They're like, oh, that person's type
Okay.
A, right? That person's an
Mm.
older child, or that person is East Asian, so they're going to be like this. Like,
Mm.
when anyone,
Left or right. And
right, exactly. I'm like, you know what? Like, culture doesn't make us who we are. The culture we're brought up in does not make us who we are. It
mhm.
influences the way we interact with it, right? And I always say, like, just because
Mm.
you're of some culture doesn't mean you're going to act a certain way because you're all you have to do is look at a bunch of people in that culture and go, oh no, they don't all act the same way. Let's say
Yeah.
East Asia, they're less prone to physicality, like physical touch, and they're not really huggers, traditionally speaking. But if you're like a peacock personality type, that's one of my animal personality types, who are really into bear hugs and hugging and physical touch, and you grow up in East Asia, it doesn't mean that you're gonna be something different. It's just gonna mean you're gonna have kind of a miserable life until you start meeting other
Mm.
peacocks in East Asia, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is my
I see.
tribe.
Yeah, I liked what you said before about how like you might have answered the questions differently over time because you didn't know as much about yourself at that point. So, so are you saying then that you believe that like people don't change, they just reveal more of who they are and discover more of who they are over time?
Yeah, especially minority, for lack of a better word, minority types, because of course
Okay.
minority types are surrounded by generally surrounded by people who are very different than them, and they're telling them to be different. So I think it's very easy for, especially for a shaman, because shamans are all about self-knowledge. So I always say shamans don't have a midlife crisis because their whole life is a midlife crisis. Like midlife crises are saved for the gatherers, right? Gatherers, if you're into safety and security, like you said, and school has been like kind of created for you, then of course you're never going to think whether you're doing is right or wrong, because the teachers, you always grew up saying, oh, you're great. Listen to the rules. Yeah, all that stuff. You're perfect. And then you're like 40 and then you're like, wait a minute, I didn't even think about what I was doing. Do I really enjoy my life, or did I just like not think about these things and fall into this? Whereas shamans, of course, don't even have that problem because they're questioning themselves throughout their whole lives, And so once again, like you're saying, you peel back those layers and start realizing, I am not my parents. I am not, the older child, syndrome or whatever. I am just who I am. And I think that's, for some people, that takes a while, but that's okay. Like, I'm all about starting the process whenever you can.
Yeah. See, that's kind of how I view these things. Like when I hear of like personality tests, or even stuff like, astrology stuff, human design, all those things, like however valid any of the stuff is, I just think it's interesting as kind of like a tool to learn more about yourself and like to grow as a person. And it's funny because, of course, as I'm listening, to what you're describing, I'm sure everyone is like, oh, I think I'm that, or I think I'm that. But it's funny because every one that you went through, I was like, oh, I think I'm that, except for the information one. I realized I was like, yeah, that's probably not me. But, because I'm curious, like what your thoughts are, or like just to hear me describe what I'm thinking, and then your interpretation of it. Because when I heard the hunter, well, first when you mentioned gatherer, I thought, yeah, I do tend to worry about stuff and like worry about like bills or whatever it might be. And then when you mentioned the hunter, I was like, oh, well, that's totally me. Like I've started so many businesses. Like I didn't go to college because I was like, screw that, I don't want to do this path. Like I want to figure it out on my own. You said learn as you go. Like that's me. I'm like, just jump. Like I literally just posted something the other day about like just jump and build the plane on the way down. Like I just do stuff and then figure it out on the way, right? So I'm like, oh, for sure, hunter. Then you mentioned shaman, and I'm like, oh my god, like I totally like am just constantly. I have this like thirst to learn, and it's not just like gathering information. It's this like every time I learn something, I go, oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that about myself. Or, oh, it gives me clarity in my own mind about my own thoughts. And so every single one you went through up until the information one, I was like, that sounds like me. So I'm just curious, like what your thoughts are when I say all of that.
Oh yeah, no, that's a cool, it's a process, right? And I think, especially as I go through, not to keep plugging my book, but in the book, it really goes in depth, right? In terms of, like the little nuances, right? Because on the surface level, we can all kind of go, hey, like, that is kind of like me. Oh, but that's also like me. And I think that's why I wrote the book. I was like, I don't even believe in introversion, extroversion. Not really. In that I'm like, well, yeah, but some people are extroverted, right? Like some people are extroverted in a certain situation.
It's situational.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Situational extroversion versus introvert. That's exactly how I
right. And so that's why it's based in my personality typing methodology is value based, because based on your value, then you are going to be more outgoing in certain respects. And then if it's something that you don't really care about or you don't value, then you're going to be less active, right? Like this person's extroversion might be doing a TED talk on something they really believe in, but versus this person's extroversion might be doing body shots in Cabo. But if you meet those two people, they're going to be very different people, right? They're going to be like, oh, okay, those are two different people. And for you, I know, I get a feeling I already know what path you're in based on how you said that. And I think you're a shaman. Okay. So there was a third one. Mainly because I think it seemed like your motivation for all those things was like discovering yourself and kind of like so, but you have to be a specific type of shaman. So certain shamans might do kind of the more linear approach, at least in the beginning, but that's not what you did. But there are two animals within the shaman pack that kind of fit that, which you said, like, I always just like started things and just like did my own thing and, build the plane on the way down and kind of like found your way through life. Not sporadically, but in a non-linear approach, right?
You could definitely say sporadic.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But yeah, and and the fact that you're like, you just like dive into like, yeah, definitely sporadic. That's good. Because that generally means like, what, I won't say your flaw is, but like what someone else has probably said a flaw, right? Because I'm sure you've heard the whole, like, you need to be more organized. I'm sure you've been told that, or you need to like write things down or whatever.
You need to have a plan.
You need to have a plan.
So what's funny is I am very, very organized. I'm actually one of the most organized people I've ever met. but it's, as far as a plan goes, it's funny because I'll make plans in my head and then it never goes according to plan. And so I say, screw that, I don't want to make plans. But I have had a lot of people be like, you got to just pick one thing, you know? And this is part of the reason why I said hunter. But now I'm realizing, as I'm saying all this out loud, I'm like, it is like the whatever, you know, system you've come up with, or any of the other personality type things, it's really just like a descriptor, right? It's like, hey, this is what we're observing, and here's how I can put it into a set of buckets that helps us to better understand it. And all of these personality types, like you mentioned, are based on values. And so ultimately you can have all of the value, right? I value more information to make a decision. I value safety and security, but each of us is going to have a different profile of how important each of those values are to us, which then puts us in that bucket. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, 100%. The prioritization is important. And in the book, there's a lot of juxtapositions, right, that I use, which is like, okay, like, because you could have a gather and they could say gatherers always think information is important. They're always like, they're like, no, I get information all the time. But it's like, why do they get that information? They get that information because they want a sense of security and safety. And I always ask the question to determine whether you're a gatherer that seeks safety and security versus information. Is I just ask, like, to see if they're a Smith, I ask, would you take an experimental drug if you if you were the only one who could do it? Would you take an experimental drug to see if it worked? And I'm not saying that a Smith would always say yes to it. They're not like, oh yeah, of course I would. But they would like think, huh, okay. Like or they might ask a question like, oh, what's it going to solve? Like, is it going to cure cancer? Like, even though I might die from it, I think that might be worth it if it cures cancer. Or like, whereas a gatherer would be like, absolutely not. Like, why would I put myself in jeopardy? Like, that doesn't make sense.
See. The Smith is like, what information could this potentially reveal?
Yes.
And if there is a payoff of that revealing of information that is appealing to a Smith, versus the gatherer is like, hey, I could die from this.
Yeah, and it's a natural
instinct
to me. Yeah, it's the natural reaction to. I tend to like. I don't even. Sometimes when I ask questions, I'm not even caring what the answer to the question is. I just want to see the reaction from the person. Like a Smith I've had a Smith tell me that they'd go into a burning building to save a book if it was the last book of its kind in the world. But if you told the gatherer that, they would be like, that sounds dumb, you know? And I think that's a big difference. Like, if I were to tell it to a gatherer, they would have a look on their face like, that was dumb. They might not say it, but they would definitely feel that way. And I think that visceral reaction can tell, at least between those two. I'm not saying with the other types, but between those two, it's an easy tell.
Sorry, if you can't tell by my face, I love questions like that. Like, I love questions like scenarios where it's like, what would you do in this scenario? Because it reveals so much about who you are as a person. Because when you said that, I was like, oh my God, what would I do? Right? Like, when you said I thought you were gonna say the last book on Earth. I would go right into that building.
Oh yeah. I would do that too. Last book on Earth for sure.
But yeah, no, that's such an interesting.
And that's how you know you're not a hunter, because a hunter's like, books? I don't read. No, I'm just joking. Hunters do read, but I will say what they read is tends to be very, very different than what a shaman would read. I have a hunter friend who he's a photographer. He's a professional photographer for an LA for the Dodgers. And he I think I had a script, because my background is in screenwriting, and he was like passing a script around of mine, because he's like, oh, I'll pass it to people I know. And I'm like, oh, wait, by the way, if you want to read it, just to make sure, I don't want you passing around something that you haven't read, because you're kind of like staking your name to it. He's like, I don't read. Come on, just give it to me. I'll give it to people. Like, I don't care. He's like, I don't care about that. And yeah, so I think it's just funny because we have these stereotypes. That's just a funny stereotype about hunters.
Sure.
Of course they read. But will they read as much as a Smith? No. Will they read as much as a shaman? Probably not.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, so now what I'm really curious of is like these animal types within there. I'm sure everyone listening is curious about that too. So tell us about the animals.
Yeah. Do you want me to do like through the gatherer hunter first, or did you want to do shaman?
Let's do it. Okay. Let's go through like the biggest to the smallest.
Yeah, and if it gets wonky, just let me know, because I'm basically going through the methodology here. But gatherers seek safety and security, right? But within that pack, there are 4 animals, and they seek safety and security in different ways. And I tend to split. Let's say there's 4. I'm doing this visually, and there's 4 here, and you can split up that way. Two packs of 2, or 2 teams of 2, and one values duty, and the other values family. And obviously, they both value duty and family more so than the other types. but those will prioritize. Like, so the difference between the stags and the beavers, I always say, is if they're at a parent teacher conference and that teacher rags on their kid, they will 100% side with the teacher. They'll just be like, oh yeah, my kid's messing up. I'm going to take them home and I'm going to teach them like exactly what you're telling me, because in their mind, it's their duty to be great parents, and to be a great parent, you need to prepare your kid for the world and make them a fine, upstanding citizen, right? The other two, they might either side with a kid or they might fall on a sword themselves, and they might say, oh, it's kind of my fault because I haven't been home early and I should have been helping them. And, they might make excuses for their kid. So we got stags, beavers, and elephants and bears. And then, of course, within those, stags differ from beavers in that stags value a chain of command, where beavers value rules. And I know that for a lot of people, that might seem like the same thing. And yet anyone who knows one or the other knows that they're very different, right?
No, it's different.
Yeah. And then, of course, on the other side, elephants and bears who value family, elephants are always trying to create a bigger family. So they're like I don't know if you ever had one of your friend's parents who was always inviting you over. Like, hey, like, you want to stay over? Like, stay. We got food, Like, that's like a total elephant move. And the bears are all about protecting the people within their family setup. So those are the four gatherers, and they make up about half the population. So I'm sure you're going to see a lot of them around, especially when you're in school, because that's going to be the majority of your elementary school teachers. And the stag, they are automatically your elementary school principal, almost like, or high school principal. They're like, I'm literally pulling this number out of my ass, but they probably make about 80 to 85% of high school principals. My mom's a stag, and she was a high school principal. So I know that type very, very well. They love to chain of command, authority, big thing for her. I used to joke because she had her own parking space, right? Obviously very close to the office. And I told her that. She's like, oh, I don't care. I'm not about authority. I'm like, yes, you are. Like, what if someone parked in your parking spot? And she'd be like, yeah, but no one would do that. I'm like, see, that's the exact mentality that stags have. No one would stomp on my authority,
Exactly. So, it's like, well, I wouldn't care. It's like, but no one would do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That in their mind, like, no one would do that. I'm this, like.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so that was the
gatherers. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have the hunters, and since hunters value excitement, they're going to separate differently than gatherers would, right? Like, gatherers value like safety and security, so they're separated by duty and family. But hunters are separated by the way they get their excitement. So like sharks or foxes and sharks get their excitement from an adrenaline rush. So they're the ones who want to go on a roller coaster, skydive, go-kart racing, all the things that make them feel like they may or may not die. They like that. They get a rush out of that, right? Like, the more dangerous, the better for them. And then on the other side are the peacocks and butterflies, and they get their excitement through consumption. So they love like seeing beautiful things, smelling beautiful things, like taste, all the five senses. That's where they get their joy from.
So you said consumption on one side, and what was the other side again?
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline. Okay.
Yeah. And so, like, and the funny thing is they're easy to tell by their flaws, right? Like someone who gets their joy from consumption could overconsume, right? So peacocks and butterflies tend to be, at their worst, they could be sex addicts. They could be overweight. They are binge eaters. They could be obviously alcoholics, drug addicts. At their worst, I'm saying they're not automatically going to be that. Yeah. And then, of course, foxes and sharks will like be that reckless person sometimes at their worst who, takes too many chances and might put themselves in danger.
Yeah.
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So the differentiation between fox and sharks, then, what's that?
This is a great one, and it's really easy to tell. Foxes, if they're going to hit a target, they'll shoot 1,000 bullets to hit one target. They'll just be like, okay, fire away. In the book, I use Billy Bathgate as an example, which is another obscure movie, but it's with Steve Buscemi's in it actually, and the guy is a gangster. Dustin Hoffman plays this gangster, and he's asking the young kid, "Who do you think's a better shooter?" And he's got two shooters. One, like he shoots one gun, and it's like bang, 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 and hits the head of the target every single time. And then the other guy just pulls out two guns, and he's like, and the target is just eviscerated, right? And that's the difference between a fox and a shark. The fox is the one who would take two guns out and just hit all the fire away, and the shark is going to be very, very specific. So they will wait 1,000 minutes to shoot one bullet to hit one target. And I think that's the differentiator between the foxes and sharks. And you'll be able to tell foxes are great in sales, right? Because in sales you got to fire a bunch of bullets, and hopefully you'll hit one. And sharks are very craft oriented and very good at things where they have to be very specific, almost like a surgeon. A lot of great surgeons are sharks.
Okay, so help me understand how that connects to the adrenaline, though. Like, I like the examples you gave of the surgeon versus the like salesperson. But can you explain like how these tie to like the adrenaline aspect of it? Because I'm not catching that.
Oh yeah, yeah. So, well, I mean, in tying to the adrenaline part, foxes get a lot of fun with different experiences, right? Like, so they will
Mm,
try 1,000 experiences once, and that's fun for them. A
I
shark
see.
would be the opposite. If they like something, they'll do it over and over and over and over again. And when it comes to their craft, that's why they're great at things based on craft, because like Michael Jordan or something, he loves basketball, he loves golf. He's going to do it
Okay.
over and over and over and over again. And obviously they get really great at it. Foxes, because
Okay.
they're doing so many different things, maybe they're not necessarily going to be a master of one thing, but they will be a
Yeah.
master of adjusting to all the different things, because their life is constantly different. So they're really good at adjusting to whatever situation hits them.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny because as we're talking about this, like I'm very much relating to like the fox thing because
Mm.
I do so many different things, and part of for me the enjoyment is just the experience. Like just go try this and see what happens. And oh
Mm.
man, that was so cool. Like I won't do it ever again, but whatever, like it was just like man, that was fun. And like you said, kind of just figuring out as you go. That's pretty interesting. Okay, and then the on the consumption side, it was
Oh,
butterflies
and peacocks.
and peacocks.
Yeah, and that's the one I always say. The peacock would be the model, and the butterfly would be the fashion designer. So, the big difference with peacocks is they're out there and they love being center of attention, and they're like, look at me, look at me. And the butterfly loves to go into their cocoon to a certain extent and create something beautiful and then bring it out to the world. So, the easiest way to tell, I mean, those are actually really easy to tell apart, because peacocks are loud and butterflies are really soft spoken and gentle. And so, like, that shows right away. Like when I think of a peacock, I think of like Jack Black or Kevin Hart, someone like a physical comic. Jim Carrey, someone who's really big out there and doesn't mind. Like, to their mind, any attention is good attention. So
Yeah, I love the movie star examples that you give because it's perfect. Like, I mean, seen so many movies and watched so much stuff. It's like, oh, okay, I get what you're saying. How does that tie into? Because those ones are under the consumption side of it, right? How does
yes.
that tie in?
Well, I mean, at their worst, a peacock is a narcissist, right? Because in a way, even if they're not over consuming like an actual physical thing, attention is something we consume too. And they will just get, their problem is they'll just get so sucked into that kind of attention that they have to fight for it, and they need it. So they can be a bit like a diva at their worst. And a butterfly, they're not particularly getting a lot of attention, and they don't need that. So what they do is they go into their cocoon and then maybe just settle in too much. I have this thing called deviant roles in the book, which says like it's kind of a joke, but it says like the worst version of each type. And for the butterfly, it's the tortured artist, right? They're the artist who goes in and feels bad for themselves, and then so consumption, they might overdrink. They're gonna be the artist who's sitting in their house just drinking by themselves, painting.
I see.
Yeah,
I see. Yeah, I know the type. Okay, so we covered gatherers, we covered hunters.
Yeah.
So now
the shamans. You want to be the shamans? Yeah. And I think that you're in the shaman pack, and I'm going to give you one. You're going to wait, and then it's going to be like, you're going to be like, oh, that one's me. So you can separate the two because they are based on self-knowledge, right? So how do they gain their self-knowledge? The dolphins and the pandas gain their self-knowledge by people. So they learn a lot about themselves through learning about other people, versus the baboons and the humpback whales. They're all about principle. They learn a lot about themselves based on the ethics and set of principles that they've learned over time and that they value. So that's a very big difference. And the way I separate them is if you have a substitute or a teacher and they're doing something like a new crazy syllabus or or methodology, and the principal comes in and says, hey, you need to like quit that stuff. I know it's working and it's great and the kids love it, but those aren't the school standards. The ones that focus on people would accommodate. They would change, because in their mind, they're more pragmatic. They're like, well, I got to be around people. If I'm not around people, I can't make real change. So of course I will change. The ones on the other side that are focused on principle, they'll probably be like, screw that. You're gonna have to fire me. I'm just going to keep doing this because this is working. And as you can see, both of those have good things and bad things, right? The one who says, screw that, is going to seem very confident and very bold, but they also might get fired and not be there at the end of the day. Whereas the dolphins and the pandas, they might be there and be able to provide for the kids, but since they capitulated, they're going to also feel a little down on themselves, right? They're going to feel like sellouts, and so they're going to be really insecure. So,
So the four animals under shaman, again, what are they?
They're the dolphins and pandas, and those are the ones that
Dolphins and
value
pandas.
people, and then
People.
baboons and humpback whales. So dolphins and pandas, you're going to find them a lot in education systems. Like, so there, a lot of them are teachers, especially higher ed. You're going to find them a lot like in counseling. Organizations where there's people and they can help them. The only organization where you're probably not going to find many of them is in the military, because that's definitely not something that they gravitate towards, unless it's like being I forgot what they're called, but the religious people in the military.
Okay.
But sorry, I forgot the term. But
that's okay.
Chaplains. There you go. They're chaplains.
Chaplain. Gotcha.
Yeah. But I think you're a baboon would be my guess, or a humpback whale. You're on the other side,
okay.
And they're not gonna. They tend to be outside of organizations, throwing tomatoes at the people inside, because they tend to like not particularly love, structure. The baboons and humpback whales will start a lot of projects. Will they finish all their projects? Not all the time. That's part of their growth arc, is learning like, hey, I got to like finish some of the things I start. I know everything's really interesting and all, but I got to complete some of these things. But yeah, that's probably, I'm guessing you're more of, I guess, a baboon. But,
okay. And did you already describe the difference between baboon and humpback or no?
Oh, no. So baboon would be like, since they're shamans, right? The baboon would be the voice of the village. So, I mean, you're doing a podcast. I mean, you're literally using your voice. Their specialties tends to be communications. They tend to be more outward. So kind of like, I was describing Jim Carrey and those, but the difference is like Jim Carrey, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, they're the ones who are going to do body shots at Cabo, right? Now the baboon is going to be more the person doing a TED Talk. So they might be really extroverted if they're preaching, essentially, and like talking about something they really believe in, and they're going to be very like charismatic about that. But, when it comes to actually like, total consumption, they may or may not care too much about that. And so if the baboon's the voice, then the humpback whale is the soul. So they'll be a lot more inward. They'll be a lot more martyrish, self-sacrificing, very, very spiritual and very nature driven.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I mean, obviously you wrote a whole book on it, but like, damn, like you're really good at that, because everything you were like, when you were talking about the voice and you're like, I think you're baboon because this, and this, I was like, I literally have I have a document where like, as I learn things about myself, I like put it in there and like, just to remind me. And like, one of the main things is like using my voice. And so it's just so funny that like you said that. I'm like, God damn, that's so spot on. That's fucking crazy. Okay. I love it. So let's talk then about the fourth one.
Oh, the Smiths. Okay. That's the one where you're like, I'm definitely not a Smith. Which is funny,
but of course I still want to know.
And also,
I'm gonna be a Smith right now and get some more information. I want to know about the Smiths.
And shamans and Smiths actually make really good partnerships, well, romantic partnerships, and also friends as well. So I'm going to explain why. So Smiths are, shamans and Smiths are also, they're the ones that the minority types, right? So the shamans would be the ones who try to assimilate. They're gonna be like, oh, maybe I should try, and they might grow up thinking, man, I'm weird and whatever. What's wrong with me? Smiths are the ones like, I don't care. Y'all are stupid. Like, like I'm gonna do my own thing. Which could be a problem too, right? Because so they value information, and they're separated by how they process that information and how they get it, how they use it. So the killer whales and the spiders on one side, they want information so they can use it, have impact. Like, they don't care about useless information. They're like, okay, how is this going to help me? Like, give me information that can help me. The chimpanzees and the owls on the other side, they just want information because it's fun. They just like to nerd out. I have an owl friend, and he's always like, everyone thinks we're geniuses because Einstein was an owl. And he's like, yeah, I know a lot about two things, massage therapy and fantasy football. That does not make me a genius, but I do know a lot about them, because those are his two interests, right? And that's how you can kind of separate the two. So like a good example I use in the book is the difference between Tesla and Edison. Edison was a killer whale. So he was, he was inventive and he liked information, but he wasn't really creating inventions to create cool things. He wanted to create inventions so he could have real impact, right? And he was really good at like establishing something to where now everything like that we have, like our electrical grid and everything, that's Edison, right? Yeah. And Tesla was just like, I just like making cool stuff. I don't care what it is. I'm going to go on my roof with my homing pigeons and just, make stuff until I die, and I think that's the difference between the two different types of Smiths.
Okay, interesting. And so then the difference between the animals on either side.
Yeah, so the killer whales and spiders, it's great because that's a really easy one. Like Hermione Granger would be an example of a killer whale, right? In that she's all about information and specifically how to use it. And the difference being killer whales, when they make their plans, because strategy is like one of the strengths of a Smith, Killer whales make their plans concurrently, meaning everybody goes at once. So like, you're going to do this, Ron, you're going to do this, Carrie, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this, and we're all going to go, and they're very aggressive about it. Whereas a spider, their plans are contingency plans. So it's more of like an algorithm, right? Okay, this is plan A, plan B, let's do it. And then if this happens in plan A, then these are our 2 or 3 options. And then if this happens with this one, then these are our 2 or 3 options. And they kind of have this branching algorithm throughout their plans. So those are the difference. Like a spider, they create a web, and I call them spiders because, webs, we don't think of them as being very strong because they're so like thin, but really, like if we were to create a web that size, it'd be really, really strong. So they're not creating the structure that spiders create with their plans isn't necessarily concrete structure, which is why it's more of like an abstract structure of design, which is why a lot of them become software engineers, and things like that, where they're creating systems or invisible systems.
If this, then that.
That's their mode.
Interesting.
Master planners. I use a lot of I don't know. Are you a big fan of Game of Thrones?
No.
Oh, dang.
I missed the beginning of that. And so like when I tried to, there's a lot of shows I've missed the beginning of, and then I go to watch it later and it feels so old by the time I go watch it. I'm like, I don't want to watch this now.
Oh, I'm saying, especially for personality, Game of Thrones. Well, aside from it, it's so good. It's such a good show. First 6 seasons are good. I'm going to put that disclaimer. 7 and 8, you can skip it. But it's so good for personality because there's so many different personalities. And I actually have a Game of Thrones personality test on my website.
Oh, really?
It uses the same methodology, but since there's so many characters, there's like, let's say 4 different types of spiders, then there's like kind of like superficial fun questions afterwards that you answer, and then it'll figure out which spider character you are.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the difference between the 2 other ones, which is
the chimpanzees and the owls.
Oh yeah, chimpanzees and owls.
And this is the example I always use for why I don't really believe in extroversion, introversion. Because in their MBTI counterparts would be the extroverted and introversion version. Like the chimpanzee would be the extroverted version. Yeah, sorry, I'm saying that a lot. And the owl would be the introverted version. But that's not how they manifest themselves. It's not like the chimpanzee is going to be like really or really like all the time out there. Like at the end of the day, I separate them by how they process information because Smiths are all about information. So chimpanzees process information by experimenting. So they will either create a model and then learn about the model's flaws and then create another model and then create another model, or they'll create experiments in a lab, or just if they're not a scientist at all, a chimpanzee will learn they're that friend who's going to mess with you and just like prod you with like taunts and stuff. And they might just be doing it for fun just to see how you react. And like, oh, okay, I know Juliana's going to act this way because I asked this question versus this person who reacted this way. Yeah. So chimpanzees are experimental and owls are theoretical. So they don't particularly love jumping into things. They prefer to like sit back and observe from afar and learn by either watching or listening and then calculating in their head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's my question. Which one are you?
Oh, what animal am I? Actually, I'm a baboon. Yeah. So I'm actually, if you're a baboon, we're the same type. So I know baboons very well. I was always told that I was too loud and my voice was, I actually had vocal nodules as a kid because I used to scream and I was too loud and I was told to like keep it down. And so that's, I learned to control my voice a little bit, but,
interesting. So you're saying we're the same?
Yeah, I think so. That'd be my guess. I mean, I started a lot of things too. Obviously I started a couple businesses, started the book and I had to learn early on from my dad, who's a chimpanzee actually. So they don't always finish everything they start either. So maybe he was just teaching me from his own experience. But as a kid, I didn't think that way. He's always like, you can't just start these things without finishing. You got to like, or in his words, he would say, you got to stop half-assing things. You got to go, if you're going to do it, I don't mind whatever you do, whatever, it's cool, jump into it, but then finish, like follow through. And so I've kept that in mind. Not that I always do that, but it's nice to know that because then I can go, okay, like, and I like,
it's so funny. I had to get to a point where I realized that I don't care about finishing anymore. Now my motto is fuck finishing because I totally get it. Like I understand the value in finishing, but like I have come to realize that like that is not what I care about. Like finishing it is not what I care about. It's the experience of doing it in the first place that I care about.
Right, because you're learning.
So for me, I'm like
through it, right?
What was that?
You're learning about yourself through the experience, right?
Exactly. And sometimes just doing something, I learned what I needed to learn, and it's like, cool, I'm moving on. Like I don't care about finishing it. Like, and I get though why other people don't understand that, right? They're like,
Oh yeah.
this is crazy. You started this project. Like, why did you not finish it? It's like, because that was not the point of doing it. But I didn't realize that before. Like, I didn't like, previously I used to feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Like, I'm so bored of this now. I want to move on. Like it's so frustrating. Why can't I finish? And now I've come to realize, oh, that's not the reason why. That's not my motivation behind doing these things. Even though I think, oh, I'm going to try this thing out now and I'm going to see what happens. It's like my goal was not to finish it. And it's funny because like this was going to be my next question to you, but now I'm already answering it while I'm saying it. But it's like, what's the, like, who cares about this stuff? Like, what's the point of all of it? And really what it is like, I think the more you know about yourself, and like the more you lean into that, like just the better life you're going to have. You're going to be able to live more intentionally. You're going to be happier. You're going to be fulfilled. And that's what I realized for me was that like, instead of beating myself up for not finishing stuff, it's like, I just don't care about finishing. What I care about is having the experience and learning what I need to learn and then go move on, because I'm not going to stop learning. I'm not going to stop growing just because, I said I'm going to do this thing. Like, no, okay. So what? I said I'm going to do that thing. I'm done with it. Moving on.
Yeah, connecting with what makes you happy, right? And it seems like such a simple thing but it's not, I don't think, for people, because I think, obviously people don't know what makes them happy, and the problem is a lot of people think they know what makes them happy and they don't want to put in the work, right? And I think in general, yeah, knowing about yourself is like the easiest way to being happy, because at least getting there, because then you'll be able to separate what people tell you should do versus what. Yes. And I like how you're like, yeah, but I'm fine with this. I'm learned about myself. So why are you giving me grief? Right. Like, and yes. It's true. Like, why is it anyone else's business? Like, right? Like whether, this is, because the problem is, and that's why I always say people don't change. And I know that sounds terrible. It does sound terrible at first glance, because people are like, wait, what are you saying? You can't change. It almost sounds like I'm saying people can't get better, but that's why I also say we can grow. My only problem with saying people can change is generally the people who are very big on that, like change. You can always change. I feel like the people who are like that only are like that because they want you to change into what they want, right? Like, no, you can change. You can be a better person. You can be exactly like me, And it's like, wait, that seems a little disingenuous, right? Yeah. Like,
well, it also makes me think that people who feel like other people can change, or like, yeah, you can change, is because maybe they haven't embraced fully who they are, and they've had to change what they think they should want or what they think they should do in order to fit into the mold they've been told they should fit into. And so because of that, it's like, well, you could change. It's like, I don't want to change. I want to be me. Right. And of course that is ever, like, in my opinion, like constant change. Right. But I'm not changing in order to fit something else. I'm changing because I'm learning. And so as I learn and as I grow, like I've said this for years now, like when someone's like, you've changed, it's like, that's a compliment to me. That is 100% a compliment. I don't want to be the Giuliano today. I don't want to be the same Giuliano I was yesterday. Like, right. I want to learn and grow and be a different person every single day, not just for the sake of being a different person, but because I'm learning and I'm growing. And anyway, sorry, I kind of went on.
I totally get it. A lot of gatherers will always say that when you have kids, you're going to change. Having kids will change you. I'm like, in their minds, I think they're thinking, oh, well, having kids will make you more responsible. And that is a good thing. But the problem is their mindset is like, oh, I'm responsible, and these other types of people are not. So they need to be like me in order to be responsible, and having kids will make them be that way. But, I have an uncle. He's a fox, so he's a hunter. He's definitely not a gatherer. He's got 3 kids. He's raised them. He's put them through college. They're now adults now. And he is exactly the same person as he was like when I knew him as a young kid, which is, he does his 2 favorite things, golf and fish, and he just does that. And he has a lot of fun. Like, he's not like that strict, quote unquote, responsible gatherer. He's always been a hunter. He's always been a fox, and he's going to be that way for probably the rest of his life. I don't think having kids changed that.
I love that you mentioned that, because my wife just gave birth to our first kid.
Congratulations.
Actually, in 2 days. Wait, today's the 26th. Yeah. In 2 days, it'll be 2 months. He'll be 2 months old.
That's very cool.
And it's funny because that's okay. Look at so much of my life. I feel like people would be like, well, once you experience this, you'll get it, And now I'm like, here I am. I'm a father. I have a kid. And I'm like, no. No. If anything, I am more of the things that people said that I should change. I am more those things today than I was before I had my kid, because I realize, to me, like the ultimate, like, this is how I feel. The ultimate thing that you can do as a parent is to show your kid how, look, I'm about to let, that almost made me emotional to say it because it's the title of my episode of my show, How to Be a Person, right?
Mm.
Like, is to like set an example and show them what it means. And to me, that is to be like 100, like as much as you possibly can be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And like the only way to do that is to learn more, right? And of course, now I'm sitting here, I'm like, I am very obviously the shaman, right? Like I just care about that so much. Like I care about it so much. But I think the reason is because I've seen the difference in my own life, right?
Mm.
Like living a certain way because that was what I thought I was supposed to live. That was the way I thought I was supposed to think and what I thought was supposed to be important to me. But the more I learned about myself and realized that it was different from that, but then embraced those things and like leaned into those things, my life's gotten a million times better because of it. And like, I feel like that is so insanely valuable to be able to pass on to somebody else, whether it's your kid or just anybody who's listening, right? That's it's something I've mentioned many times because it's really important to me. Like I when I look around and I see people who are depressed and people who are unfulfilled and people who are just going through the motions. And again, this is not like some people genuinely like that, right? They like we talked about before. They're like, "Oh, I love that I have this job that I'm going to retire at and I just go to work every day." That's 100% fine if that's what you value. But I also know there's a lot of people, and it's not just in that situation, but in many different situations who just aren't happy. And it's really, really easy to blame outside circumstances and be like, oh, it's because this is happening in my life, is this is happening in my life. When in reality, like with what you're talking about, if you fully understand yourself, like I truly do believe that people who are dealing with depression, anxiety, anything like that, look, it might sound controversial, but I don't really care. Like I don't believe this is coming from a place of experience. Okay. I've been close to people who have died by suicide. All right. I have personally witnessed their bodies afterward. Okay. So this is not coming from a place of not having experience with depression and anxiety and things like that. I've considered it myself. Okay. What I'm saying is that I don't believe those things are like something that's thrust on you. That like,
Mm.
oh, I have depression. What I believe is that those things, depression, anxiety, are a symptom of a lack of alignment in your life. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the ways that you can realign your life is through what you're talking about, right? Like the more you learn about yourself, the more you realize, oh, wait a second. I fucking hate my life because I'm trying to be this when in reality I'm this.
Right.
Sorry, I'm very passionate
No,
about
no,
this
no. That's very
subject.
with that passion that you're like, no, and I 100% agree. Obviously, like it's yeah, and it sounds so simple, like, but it's I mean, it's not. You got to put in the work. It's like anything else, but yeah, like it's. I like how you said it's a misalignment, or you just have to realign yourself. It's almost like like it's like emotional chiropractic. Is that even a verb? Emotional adjustments, like a chiropractor,
Yeah.
where it's just like but it's harder because I think especially for older people, and I have a lot of clients who are older, and that I feel like it's like a chiropractor. They've been doing something wrong for a long time, so their body is or emotions are really misaligned, and it just takes a lot longer to kind of realign it. Where I work with a lot of younger students as well, and it's kind of refreshing because they're at that stage where they're really insecure, and that's a good thing because when you're insecure, you're figuring things out, and when you're figuring things out, your emotional muscles are really loose and they can be aligned in the way that's proper to where you can kind of do that. Like I had a student who said, I don't want to grow up. And I was like, you know what? I know exactly what you mean. And you are going to grow up, but that's okay because you don't have to grow up in the way that you think you have to or that you've been told that you have to. And I think that was a great thing that she said. And she's like, oh, okay. And I've been working with her for 3 years.
Yeah. Man, I love that people like you exist.
Oh,
I'm serious because I do believe that like where we are today as like a humanity, right? Where we are today is because of the progress that everyone behind us has made. And like when you look at things like I'm not oblivious to the fact that there are people who just fucking hate being alive, right? They're pissed off, they're angry about a lot of different things like that exists. And I totally understand it. But what I'm saying is that like I do believe that we as humanity can get to a point where that's not the case. Like I really do believe that that's possible because like and I've said this a lot of times too on the podcast. Like I believe that at our core, like human beings are good. And I'm again saying this also without getting into detail, like I've been around people who've done some really insane stuff that people would probably describe as evil. Okay. But even in those people, I feel like if you dig, you can see that like deep down that they're not coming from a place of like what we see in the movies where there's a good guy and a bad guy. Like that's I don't believe there are bad guys. Like I believe that there are good guys and good guys that maybe have gone down a wrong path or good guys that have been conditioned and end up where they're at doing the things that they're doing. Um, Not that they shouldn't take responsibility for those things, but that's the whole thing we're talking about actually, right? Is taking responsibility,
Yeah.
figuring out what in your life is not in alignment. And so I'm saying all this to say I appreciate the work that you do and the work that everyone does to kind of move all of humanity forward, because I really do believe that that is what is going to get us where we want to go. Like with people like are complaining about this problem in life and this problem and this, it's like I think that we can all get to a point where we're happy, fulfilled, healthy, and all of those things. But it's going to take people changing the patterns that have existed. And like you said, like talk, like for a kid to understand what we're talking about. Oh my God. Right. Oh my God. That's so insanely valuable for children to understand these concepts and to be able to carry them forward in their life. Like to think about what they could accomplish if this is understood at a young age versus like, you know, you and I kind of just like, hey, let's try to figure this out as adults. And I'm just having a podcast and people are telling me stuff and you're like, oh, I'm studying these different tests. And you know what I mean? Like for a kid to be able to understand that. Anyway, I try to take a meta view of not just what I'm doing, but also humanity. Like how does humanity get to move forward? And I think, you know, the work that you do is part of that.
Yeah, I think I love the idea of just, I mean, obviously we have so many more influences on us now because we're exposed to so many different things because it's through social media and stuff. So it's even more important now to be able to detach, okay, this is what exists outside of myself, but this is what exists inside of myself. And though it's not fully formed yet, and it's okay for this to have a little bit of an influence on that, I still have to take the time to like away from those kinds of things so I can form this by itself so I can know what's genuine, what's not.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I was curious is like, you know, cause you're relating scenarios where you're talking to people, you know, and like, it's very easy to like kind of put someone into, you know, this category of the system that you've created. So what I'm wondering is like, do you feel like that's a good thing? Like, do you feel like that's helped you? Do you feel like it's limited anything? Like, I'm just curious, like what your experience has been, because you're an expert in this, right? So that means when you meet someone, I'm sure you like instantly are putting people into these categories, right?
Yeah, I would say it's helpful in the sense because I'm interested in it. I mean, I think I've always had a natural interest in people, right? Shamans are interested. We're learning about ourselves, but we often learn about ourselves through other people. And also that's like, especially for baboons are very like open. They seem, not every shaman seems super open, where a baboon does seem very open. So thus people will tell them a lot about themselves generally. And we tend to be open about ourselves, right? And I think anything that encourages people to constantly be learning more and more about the people around them in a good way, in a good, genuine way, not in like, oh, how am I going to get something out of this person? You know, like not like that. Like, how do I, like, you know, I've done this talk sometimes with, on sales teams. And then I was like, oh, you know, I don't really like how this is feeling. Cause this is feeling more like, okay, who are the type of people and how do we like get them to
Here's
buy?
How we extract the most amount of money.
Yeah. I'm like, I think I'm more about like, how do you make them happier and how do you make your life happier by meeting them, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, I will say, cause I think I've talked about this before too. Like I love making money. I think money is awesome. And I think it's cool to have a lot of it. Like I think you get to have a better life because you have more money. Okay. So I'm definitely like for that, but also at the same time, I do agree that like your goal in making money should be to add value to people. And I think when you do add value to people's lives, it is making money, and making a lot of it is just a natural byproduct of that. When you add value to enough people's lives, the money comes back to you. And it's not in some magical way, but it's just simply an exchange, right? If you're offering somebody something that's enough value, you're getting that money in return in exchange for that value you're offering them. And I do think what you just said is really cool though, because if your goal in understanding this is to have a bigger impact and provide more value to people, it can help you make a lot more money too. But actually tell me what you have to say about that, because I wanted to go back to something else.
Oh no, I definitely think money is one of those things where I always tell my students, at least, like, you know, money, what are you going to do with money? Buy things to make you happy. generally is how it comes out. So I'm always just like, well, if you find something that makes you happy, then you kind of skip the middleman, right? And generally, as long as the money's going to come, it's going to take care of yourself. And the biggest thing that money can buy is freedom. But it's also important to know yourself first, so then you can do what's best when you actually have that freedom.
Yes.
If you're just doing this thing, then you can be free and then go to Palm Springs and live in retirement, but then you don't know exactly what you like doing in the first place. Who cares? I'd rather work my whole life if I enjoy it, because obviously I'm not digging ditches. I wouldn't want to do that my whole life. But I feel like I've been blessed to be put in a position where I had a choice. So I do think that when we have choices, we need to honor the people who sacrificed for us to get us those opportunities by taking the time to figure out who we are, so that we can actually genuinely be happy.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. I love what you just said, because I think sometimes when I talk about like, oh, I'm learning stuff about myself, I'm learning about me, that sometimes it feels not to me, but like the impression that is that sometimes it's like, God, you're so self-centered. Like you're just thinking about yourself all the time. And it's just like, first of all, the more me that I am, the more I'm able to help other people. Okay. So I have no qualms about that whatsoever. Like I absolutely love it. But the other part of it too is what you said, is like, there are people who came before you that made sacrifices in order for you to be able to have the freedom to actually do this. Because like you said, when you mentioned about digging ditches, there were people before you, like, they didn't have a choice, man. Like you're here, you're like, I'm a life coach, I wrote a book, and they're like, I had to dig a ditch for 14 hours a day for 70 years until I died on the job, because I was just trying to put food on the table. Right. And it's like, to truly appreciate that is not to continue living that way. Say, well, they did that, so I got to do that too. No, it's to say, bro, they did that so that I could have a better life, so that I could learn these things, and so that I could progress and move forward and have a better future and create a better future for the people after me. So like, cause I think about that too. Like, so my dad grew up in Sicily, and in Sicily, like the house they lived in was like dirt floors. Like when you say dirt poor, like they were literally dirt poor. And I sit here and think, like, what's funny is I actually didn't know that until I was like 30 years old. And I was talking to my dad, and he told me, I was like, wait, what? I had no clue. It's amazing to me to think that like my own dad, like we're not even talking like grandparents, like my own father lived in a house with dirt floors. And now I'm sitting here recording a podcast in like a townhouse in Arizona, and it's sunny and nice. And I've just got like my guitar hanging on the wall, and like, you know what I mean? I'm driving a Tesla, and like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. But like, that's the whole point. That's the whole point, is to then like, you learn this stuff so that you can better yourself, but also then have an impact on other people.
Yeah. And then you're going to pay it forward too, right? Like it's essentially kind of like paying forward for your child, right? Because you're also now you're even prepared to even help them out, like be who they are versus being who you are, right? Because I think that's an issue. And look, I'm not a parent myself, but I've worked with 1,000 parents a year, and sometimes that was an issue. Sometimes where it's like, funny, these parents really worked hard and they sacrificed, but they also kind of expect their kids to be like them a little bit. Yes. But then I'm like, but do you really want them to be put in the same situation as you are? You're giving them the opportunity to be something more than that, which is something like maybe happier, because they can actually take the time to figure out who they are, versus just constantly thinking, okay, good grades, got to go to work, dig the ditch. Like these are these opportunities that we should relish.
Exactly. See, it's so funny, like you say that, because I was thinking about how on social media, sometimes people will be doing stuff, and in the comments, they'll be like, get a real job. Like, wow, look what this generation's doing. And it's so funny, because you go, that's hilarious, actually. And I think it's amazing that people get to just show up on social media and just be themselves and make money doing that. That's crazy, right? That's crazy.
Absolutely.
But it's exactly what you said. It's like some people are stuck in this idea of like, well, I had it hard and I have to go to work every day. So you got to do the same thing, or else it's not real. When ultimately, like, bro, just like we were talking about, right? Like, if on a micro scale, I am working to have a better future for myself, but also create a better future for my kid and their kids and their kids, right? But the same is true on a macro scale as humans. This is what I was saying before, is that like, we want humanity to move forward. Okay. It's not just about my lineage, right? I have one kid. I don't know if I'm going to have any more kids, and who knows if he's even going to have a kid, right? Like, it's not just about yourself, right? It's about creating an impact on the world. And ultimately, like, if we all are able to learn more about ourselves, live more in alignment with that, and reach our actual potential, not because, just let's be real, but like we gave the example of the dude digging ditches. He didn't reach his potential.
Right.
And that's sad, right? That's sad. Like, people have existed and they didn't even have an opportunity to think about reaching their potential, right? They just had to physically labor all day long just to survive. But now we are here and we have an opportunity to do this. And it's like, it's almost as if like, dude, don't let those ditch diggers have wasted their time.
Right.
Not because we're throwing it away, not reaching our potential.
That's the greatest insult. That's the greatest insult you can do to anyone who's sacrificed themselves, is to not take advantage of what they've given you. It's like playing a basketball game and like having this person work really hard to get a double, triple team. I get double or triple team just to set up my teammates and passing the ball. And the worst thing is that they hold and they don't shoot it. I'm like, why are you not shooting it? And they're like, oh, I don't want a ball hog. I'm like, we're working to get a double and triple team so you can open so you can get a nice, easy shot. And now you've basically wasted all the energy, and now I got to do it all over again. Like, just, like it's crazy. And the best thing, I think that's why I love traveling too, because I think that's a great thing for people. Unfortunately, part of the reason is when you travel, you realize, dang, we have it really great in America. And you hear what people say in other countries, and I say, wow, yeah, like, I don't understand what's the big deal. Like, people should take advantage of those freedoms you have and like do the things that make you happy, because I don't have those. I mean, I'm just like, I have to like, plant rice here in Thailand, like I don't have those luxuries that you have to be able to do those things. And they're like, wow, in America, you have kids stressing about school. Like, I would love to go to school. It's hilarious how we take things for granted here. And I think one of the number one things we take for granted is the freedom to be ourselves, funny enough. And I feel like, we got to do that more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think part of it too, and this is kind of taking it in a little bit of a different direction, but like, I think part of it too is not, how I was saying before about believing that people are good. I really do like that. I believe that to my core. And I also really believe that like, it's kind of my job to like get other people to believe that too. I'm not going to sit here and like convince someone, right? If they're just like, no, people suck. It's like, fine, whatever, right? You can believe what you want to believe. That's okay. But that's actually part of the reason why I do this podcast. Like I told you, I'm trying to recreate those conversations I was having when I was driving Uber, but I drove Uber for over a decade. And the part of the reason why I want to share those conversations is not only because they were awesome, but because it made me realize, right, over a decade of like a revolving door of people getting in and out of my car, I was like, I haven't met a bad person yet. This is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I've met thousands and thousands of people, and like, they're all good, right? Like, if you talk to someone long enough and you get to the core, you're like, this is a good person.
Yeah.
And I do believe that like, all of whatever issues, whatever problems that exist in the world, I do believe that it is because we make someone our enemy, right? To some extent, someone is our enemy. And I don't necessarily mean like physical violence enemy. What I mean is like, oh, that rich person, that person who has a lot of money, they're a bad person. Or that person who's like both ends of the spectrum, that person who's poor and who's getting benefits, that person's a bad person. They're taking advantage of the system. It's like, anytime we like separate ourselves from other people and view them as the enemy, it's us versus them. It's like that, in my opinion, is the problem. What leads us to having all of the whatever issues anybody feels like the world has. It's like, I really do believe that it comes down to this separation. And so anyway, I'm saying all this to say that the more that we understand ourselves and the more we understand other people, the better, the best version of ourselves that we can become, reach our potential, and actually help other people as well. It's like, I think the better off the entire world's going to be.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think the more learning about ourselves can teach us two things, which is both are pretty awesome, which is that we ourselves, there's this part of us that's actually very special and different than other people. But also learning about ourselves and learning about personality types, we realize, oh, I am special, but there are also people out there who are just like me, and I'm not alone. I think that's a great combination, to feel special, but also not feel alone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things I think is really cool about this, is that yes, it is to learn about yourself. And as you learn about yourself, you help other people, but also it just helps you to understand other people better. And like, I think that is really cool, because if your intentions are good, which I believe most people, their intention is good, then as you learn this information, it means that everyone you interact with, if you can put them into one of these categories, it's not for the sake of judgment. It's for the sake of, oh, now I know how I can best help this person. Now I know how I can best interact with them and have a good relationship with this person.
Yeah, it's all about connection. And at the end of the day, the funniest thing is when I would teach this to my teachers, the ones that would pick it up the quickest and be definitely the most willing, because I'll be honest, Not everyone was willing at first because everyone was like, what are you talking about? This doesn't exist. Like, everyone should be like this. Because remember, they're teachers, so a lot of them have like, certain set structure in their head, right?
Yes.
But the ones that took to the quickest were the parents, because they were like, oh, no wonder why I hate my son and I like my daughter, or vice versa. Like they started getting, oh, no wonder why I connect with this child. I love them equally, but I like them unequally. And they started seeing those connections, right? They're like, okay, no wonder why, because my son is like this, and I get it. And do I love that? No, but like at least now I know. And so the cool thing is then they were able to use it with their students. So the ones who were parents connected to were the quickest by far.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Eric, this has been a really, really awesome conversation.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun.
Oh man, I'm so glad that you came on. For anyone who is listening that wants to connect with you, learn from you, buy something from you, how would they do so?
Well, if you want to buy something from me, you definitely buy this book. This wonderful book called Power of Personality. You can find it anywhere you buy books. Like if you want to go in Barnes & Noble and order it in the store, you can, or you can, I think everyone just orders on Amazon. You can definitely find it on Amazon. Just look up The Power of Personality. If you want to take the test, now I've always put a disclaimer that it's a cookie cutter test, like all online tests are. I do think mine is pretty good, but still a test. Still online cookie cutter test. So you can go on utopiaproject.com, and that's U like YOU, like YouTube. So utopiaproject.com, and there you can find a personality test. If you want to learn more about my life coaching, I know it's weird. I got two sites because one's a WordPress site. The other is just a regular site. You can go on projectutopia.com, and that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Eric, seriously, man, thanks again. That was such a great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on. And yeah, man, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Oh, yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate it. For everything I have to offer, visit howtobeaperson.co.